This week I talked about how socializing is protective against dementia, and you guys had questions. A lot of questions. So let's talk about what that study found. Now, this was what's called a meta-analysis, meaning they actually just looked at other studies and tried to combine all the data to look for overlap and see what the consistent story was between them. In this case, 13 longitudinal aging studies where in different countries, other researchers had followed adults into their older years when dementia would then develop. And the strength of this approach is they could, one, rule out people who had obvious signs of dementia leading into the study. Now, that doesn't rule out folks who just had dementia that was so early it couldn't be detected. And it's cross-cultural. There were people in Malaysia, Germany, the US, Singapore, and so on. On the other hand, because it's not a lab study, they weren't able to control all those variables and say, oh, try socializing this way versus this way and see if you develop dementia in a few years. Now, one of the most common questions people asked was, what counts as social contact? And the answer seems pretty broad. While they didn't investigate every single type of social contact, a lot of these studies just meant contact of any kind, including a phone call. And that suggests, at least, that all these different forms of contact should count. Things like social media or playing video games online with friends. And a lot of you asked about frequency. And again, in these studies, weekly and even monthly contact was sufficient to show a significant effect. And finally, a huge marker when it came to mild cognitive impairment was loneliness. Those who reported being in long-term relationships, married, and not feeling lonely on loneliness scales fared far better than those who did not. Anyway, I hope that answers some of your questions. Feel free to post any more in the comments below.